Evening. How's everyone doing? Great, great, great. My name is Pastor Willie Francois. I'm the pastor here at Mount Zion Baptist Church, and it is my joy to welcome each of you for this conversation that we intend to have this evening. And how rare it is, how strange it is, we live in a world where it is revolutionary to have a conversation around the truth. And that is what we plan on having today, a dialogue around truth, about values, things that matter to all of us. It was Reinhold Niebuhr who said something that really helps frame the type of work that I think about. And it is our capacity for justice that makes democracy possible. But it is our inclination for injustice that makes democracy necessary. And what we have witnessed for a little over a month in our current administration, and what we witnessed for the last 2 years, the rampant type of indecency and bigotry and unpreparedness, that it's conversations like this that are still working to save the soul of our state and to save the soul of our nation. And so I welcome you to Mount Zion, a sacred place, a place that is not sacred because it bears the name of church. It's not sacred because we have symbols like crosses, but a place that is sacred because we do things like this. We allow human beings to gather and to talk about what is dear to them. We allow human beings to come together and to fight for justice and to fight for freedom. That is what makes this place sacred. Not because we pray or because we preach, but because of the work that we do to transform the world and to hold people accountable, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. So as I welcome you to this place, I must also say, I was given permission by Brother Derek to acknowledge that I am proud to be a part of one of those early waves of New Jersey residents to pledge support to the ambassador because of his commitment to criminal justice reform and because of his integrity. So it is a significant honor to have you here in this sacred place, a place sacred because we are God-embodying, freedom-fighting, justice-loving people. Let's talk to God. Oh God, our Creator, we are in awe of your presence that even embodies this place. It is in these moments that we shall converse. God, that we shall think deeply about the future of our state and the soul of our state. God, we're here today because we are people who love justice, people who fight for freedom, people who privilege policies that matter to people over politics that divide people. God, we are here in this place expecting a move of sacredness, a move of eternality, because we believe that it is through the constructive dialogue with one another that we can build the world that you have called us to build. God, we are here today thinking about the beloved community, America the beautiful. We are here because we believe in these conversations through the democratic process that we have the capacity to make America and New Jersey be who she says she is on paper. God, we're here because we need a just economy. We're here because we need the de-incarcerated state. We're here because there are people who need jobs. We are here because returning citizens need to come home to places where they can work and where they can live and where they can love. God, we're here to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with you. So God, will you, even in these moments, give us a vision for moral courage? Give us a vision that we can challenge the status quo, that we can push back on the intoxicating evils that we are seeing and that are represented in our media and in our television screens every night. God, will you give us the courage to be the resistance to everything that is bigoted, everything that represents xenophobia, everything that represents Islamophobia, everything that represents racism, everything that represents sexism. God, will you give us the power to be the resistance to everything that is attacking our democracy? We believe it is possible because we are people of imagination. We are people of moral conscience. Will you give us the courage to speak truth to power? And we will give you all the glory and the honor because we belong to you. In the name of all that is good and loving, we pray. Amen.
I'll go next. Why not, right? Good evening, Pleasantville. I said good evening, Pleasantville. All right, I'll be very quick. We have two dignitaries first up to speak. Councilwoman Pleasantville, Judy Ward. Judy, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, fellow Democrats. I'm here today to welcome you to Pleasantville, to the 2nd Ward, which is where we're at in this beautiful Wind Sand Center. On behalf of Mayor Tweedle and the City of Pleasantville, I just wanted to say good evening to everyone and welcome, and also to Governor in the future, gubernatorial candidate, Phil Murphy. We just want to welcome you to Pleasantville, wish you the best of luck. I've been reading about you and see that you're cleaning up most counties as far as getting endorsements, and hopefully the same will happen in Atlantic County. God bless everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Judy. Forgot to introduce myself, Mike Sullivan, the proud chairman of the Atlantic County Democratic Committee. Want to introduce or recognize some of our dignitaries we have in the audience tonight. Freeholder Ernest Corsi, Pleasantville Councilman Gus Harmon, Atlantic City Councilman Mo Delgado, Pleasantville Councilwoman Judy Ward, and Pleasantville Councilman Ricky Sistrunk. I apologize if I'm missing anybody. I will do one quick plug. If you like Phil and you want to support Phil, Sunday, March 19th is our Atlantic County Democratic Convention. We want to make this the biggest in history. $26 a ticket. You can go and you can support your gubernatorial candidate of choice. And if you can vote, you can even vote for your gubernatorial candidate of choice. So we need you Sunday, March 19th. Flyers are outside. We need your support. Real quick, we want to hear from the man of the hour, but we want to bring up somebody to introduce him, a real special guy. He's a great assemblyman, he's a good man, and he's going to be our next state senator, Vince Mazzio.
Good evening, Pleasantville. It's great to be here. I was just down in Linwood earlier, and I saw Phil Murphy give his speech at a house in Linwood, and I'm going to tell you, he's dynamic. He says all the right things. He's for the people of New Jersey. He made one point, what he said, I'm going to start from the bottom up, not from the top down. Now, I've been in an assembly for 4 years now, and today I'm very proud. I was up in Trenton, and we passed a bill that's going to help with the opiate and heroin addiction, allowing our first responders to have more access to Narcan and to use it more than once. And this is going to save lives. You know, I've been in Assembly since 2013, and that's when Governor Christie was reelected. And everybody knows in this room that the governor hasn't been our governor, really, in the last 4 years. He had presidential aspirations. He was more concerned of being president than running New Jersey, and we lost because of that. A couple examples. He went around the United States and boasted about 400 vetoes. A lot of those vetoes, you know what they were? A couple of my bills was for health care for women. You know, Phil Murphy will probably tell about his agenda a little bit, but, you know, in Atlantic City, off Atlantic City, we could have been the first wind turbine on the East Coast. And we had a little pilot program to put 5 turbines off the coast of New Jersey. But every time the BPU on the governor's command just shot it down for different reasons. They fought and they fought. Now they have it up in Rhode Island, they have it in Massachusetts, and New Jersey is behind. Well, tonight we're going to have Phil Murphy come up here, and he's going to talk about women's health care. He's going to talk about equal pay for equal work. He's going to talk about the economics. You know what? I heard he's a pretty good businessman. I heard that. And I love the fact, because he's from the same mold as me. I'm a businessman, but the social issues, we're on the same page. And we believe in the democratic values. So, without any further ado, the next governor of the state of New Jersey, Phil Murphy.
Wow, that's an introduction. I only hope I can live up to it. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm honored to be here. Pastor, other than sharing a little bit of Harvard roots, it's an honor to be with you. You were out there for me when it was cold and lonely. So thank you. Councilwoman, thank you so much for being such a gracious host and having us here in this hallowed place. And I want to say give glory and honor to God because we are at Mount Zion. Chairman Mike, love you, buddy. Thank you very much for what you said. Vice Chair Steve Dick, right beside you. You guys do a great job in Atlantic County. You've been really good to me. And what happened to Vince? I lost Vince. Vince Mazzio, standing beside Colin Bell, who's running for the Assembly. These are really good guys. They deserve your support. Thank you for what you said. It means a lot to me. What a treat to be here. I've been looking forward to this for several weeks, and I'm honored to be among you. I pulled into Atlantic City and gave a speech earlier today on an urban agenda, which we're talking about all over the state. I then, as Vince said, I went to Linwood and had a good gathering of about 50 folks in a private home. And then I'm here tonight, and I'm really honored to be here, literally honored to be here. And by the way, the night doesn't end with this. In this very building, after we break, we're going to have a meeting with some of our brothers and sisters in labor, in this case, Sheet Metal Local 19. So it's a long day, a big chunk of it in Atlantic County, and it's a good day. And so I'm honored to be here, and I really appreciate your having me. A couple of quick housekeeping matters. If you have questions, it would be really good if you could fill out, Madam, may I? One of these forms for two reasons. One is if we get 10 questions on infrastructure, we'll collate them and ask one that looks like the other 9. And secondly, if we don't get to your question, we want to know how to find you, because we pride ourselves in following up and getting back to people. Does that sound okay? The other thing is this, is that when we do the questions, we have microphones. If you could talk into the microphone. Because we have people listening in on the telephone. Jenny, am I right? As well as we're streaming live on Facebook right here. Both cameras? Are these both Facebook? This is Facebook. Just this one. So everyone can wave. We're streaming live on Facebook. So it's good to be with you tonight. Sam, how many people on the phone right now? 2,100 people are on the phone right now listening to us. That gives you a sense of how people are feeling these days, by the way, in the state of New Jersey. And I think you could also argue in the United States of America. The crowds are bigger in the room, on the phone, on Facebook. The letters that we get, the emails that we get. People are really upset. They're somewhere they're afraid. Too many stories over the past couple weeks of Latino families that are not sending their kids to school anymore because they're worried they're going to get nabbed at pickup or drop off. Hearing too much of that. They're afraid. They're mad. They're frustrated. They can't believe this happened. I can't tell how many people I meet who said, listen, we thought the order of events was going to be we extend the Obama presidency to the Clinton presidency, and then we replace Governor Christie. And now here we are, still with Governor Christie and President Donald Trump. And that combination is proving to be very difficult for us right now. And so the turnout tonight is a very good indication, and we're seeing it all over the state. I had a couple of meetings in Camden earlier today, and you're seeing it in there. Tomorrow I'll be up in Hudson County with a whole series of events. So we're seeing it all over the place. I thought I would do, other than also echoing Mike's shout out to the elected officials, candidates, and other dignitaries, it's a particular honor to have you here, as well as to members of the clergy. And I cannot thank you enough, Pastor, for your inspiring words and your support early on for Team Murphy. I thought what I might do tonight is very briefly talk about the race, and I mean literally 1 minute, tell you who I am if we're meeting for the first time. And then thirdly, a couple of comments about how we see New Jersey, both the challenges and the opportunities, and then throw it open to questions. Does that sound all right? And I'll buzz through my comments pretty quickly so we can get to your comments and questions. And again, if you have a question, just raise your hand, and someone from Team Murphy will take that white card right out of your hand, like magic. So listen, here we go with a couple of facts and figures. The governor's race in New Jersey is this year. The primary is on June 6th. The general election is on November 7th. We declared our candidacy last May, on May 16th. I'm not an elected official. I said, you know what? I'm going to get out there and throw myself into this thing early, and I'm glad we did. Our primary is competitive. There are some good candidates running. The other side of the aisle is competitive. And so and that's the way it should be. With a state in crisis, we need to have as much debate and openness as possible. Chairman Mike Silliman mentioned something earlier, that the Atlantic County Convention is coming up in March. Those conventions are terrific because they're an opportunity to get in big rooms like this, present the candidates, and folks decide. That's the way democracy ought to be. There's an added dimension, however, that is worth noting. I've been going around the state saying this is the most consequential election for the 9 million of us who live in New Jersey in the past 70 years. And I still think that's the case. We'll get to that in a second. But you also have to know that this is one of only 2 elections, statewide elections, in the United States of America in the year 2017. Only 2 races in the country: the governor of New Jersey and the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Next year, by comparison, keep this in the back of your mind, 36 governor's races, 33 U.S. Senate races. So next year, there'll be 69 statewide races in America. This year, 2. And we happen to be one of them. And if that weren't enough, they are taking place. They're the first elections up to bat in the presidency of he who shall not be named. So if we didn't have enough on our hands already, we've got the Klieg lights shining on us. And if you follow our campaign, and by the way, we got our website somewhere, I hope, Jenny. It's Murphy4NJ.com. Murphy4NJ.com. Please follow us. Please kick the tires. If you follow us, you're going to see, particularly over the past 5.5 weeks, and you won't have to wonder why I'm saying 5.5 weeks. It dates back to January 20. You'll see a campaign that is both walking and chewing gum. You'll see a campaign, and you'll see me individually, as laser focused on what we need to do to get New Jersey back on its feet. Right? And there's a long agenda there. We've got challenges that existed well before Donald Trump. So we've got to focus like laser on what we need to do to get our state back on its feet. But you will also see us in a different light. I don't want the historians ever to ask the question, where was Murphy when that transgender executive order came out last week? When there was weeks of anti-Semitic behavior, including on Sunday at a cemetery in Philadelphia or outside of Philadelphia. I don't want them to ask where I was when they're discriminating across the board because of someone's religion, or banning people from 7 countries from coming into the United States from which not one terrorist act has ever occurred since 9/11. Or I don't want to have anyone ask him, where were we when President Trump and the Republican Congress starts talking about dismantling the Affordable Care Act or throwing Medicare block grants at us. So you will see us, if you follow us on Murphy4NJ.com, laser focused on what we need to get New Jersey on its feet, but also standing up for American values and our Constitution, and we won't have it any other way. And I know I join you and you join me in that respect. So that's enough about the election. A minute on me. I'm going to take some of my clothes off here. Jenny, relax. It won't be too much. I apologize. Good. That's enough, someone said here. Sir, boy, did my wife put you up for that?
She did.
So here's the quick skinny on me. Born in Boston. Please don't hold that against me. You born in Boston?
My family in Boston.
All right, okay. Let's just keep that between you and me. The good news is no one's listening in on the phone. There's no one in the room. It'll just be you and me. Born in Boston, grew up outside of Boston. I call it middle class on a good day. I think the accurate way to put it is we grew up in a family working poor. My mom got out of high school. My dad did not. She made sure that we went to college. He made sure we cared about politics and the community. We all worked. The problem was we didn't have enough money. It wasn't that we weren't working. I worked illegally as a dishwasher in what we call a diner at the age of 13. And if that weren't enough, my wages were stolen by the jerk who owned the diner, which is kind of hard to believe given I was making $1.65 an hour. But that's life, I guess, in the big city. I'm a proud public school product. You know, we had, yeah. Let the record show I was not fishing for applause, Matt Placken. By the way, I've got two big sisters, one of whom's a social worker, the other just retired. Yeah, let's hear for social workers. But the other one retired 15 months ago as a Boston City school teacher. When you run for office, you talk about yourself a lot. Too much for my taste, frankly. I think back to when I was growing up, we had no money, like so many of us, but we were happy. So I asked myself, how do you square that? No money and happy. And I've determined that, and I think back to for whatever reason, to 1967 when I was 10 years old. I'm 59 years old. I grew up in John Kennedy's and Lyndon Johnson's America. And I say that because you felt like if you went to school, you worked hard, you got good grades, you stayed out of trouble, you were going to do better than mom and dad. That was in the bank. And if you were to say to me, fast forward, what's the one single reason why you're running for governor? It would be that 10-year-old kid today in that working poor family in New Jersey cannot put that same deal in the bank. And if nothing else, I'm up here doing this and I'm running to turn that back on its head the way it used to be. Right? After graduating from high school, I went to Harvard College, got a master's degree at the University of Pennsylvania. Easy now. I used to say the Wharton School, and then my wife reminded me that's where he who shall not be named went to school. So I have gussied up my resume a little bit to say the University of Pennsylvania, which it happens to be, and dropped it 10 paragraphs down in my remarks. I worked in financial services, kind of quote-unquote on Wall Street, but around the world for 20 years, and that matters later in my life. I worked in New York, Germany, that particularly matters, Hong Kong, back to New York. I left business about 13 and a half years ago. In the last few years of my business career, I frankly got mad at myself because all I was doing as a Democrat was voting. And we say to our kids all the time, voting is necessary but not sufficient. You have to do more, and I violated my own principles. So I started at night, if you will, while I was still working, getting involved in organizations, and such that when I left my job, I did that stuff sort of in my day life. I'll tell you about a couple of those things. I'm not patting myself on the back. I just want to make sure you know, if we're meeting for the first time, what some of my passions and interests are. So I became the National Finance Chair for the Democratic National Committee alongside one of my political heroes, Howard Dean. Howard ran for president. I liked Howard when he ran for president. I loved him as the chair of the DNC because he put us back into business in every county and every state, no matter how red in the United States. I would say parenthetically, let's hope that Chairman Perez and Vice Chairman Ellison get us back into every state and every county in the United States, right? So I became the finance chair of the DNC. I developed a long relationship with, and as I stand here tonight, I'm New Jersey's only representative on the national board of, in my judgment, the iconic, one of the most iconic institutions in this country, the NAACP. So let's hear it for the NAA. My relationship was with Julian Bond, God rest his soul, who passed away about a year and a half ago, one of the great civil rights icons. I chaired the board of a women's shelter in Monmouth County. I don't know if anyone here is from Monmouth, called 180 Turning Lives Around. I think it's one of the best shelters in the state. My wife and I started a teen helpline called Second Floor, which is now statewide. I chaired the original commission on pension and health care benefits in this state under Governor Cody 12 years ago for public sector employees. That's certainly still relevant. I co-chaired a national task force on public education in the 21st century. It did a bunch of things, and then ultimately served as the U.S. ambassador to the Federal Republic of Germany under President Barack Obama. Now listen, I love President Obama. I love the guy. I always thought very highly of him. But he's looking even better and better by the second, if that's possible. We should have a classified ad. Wanted, adult leadership, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Oh my Lord, help us. That's another story. We came back, we live in Monmouth County in Middletown. I'm married to Tammy Murphy for 22 and a half years. She would be here, but she is working the order on a parallel track in Mercer County and Essex County right now. I think she's in Essex right now. We are the parents of Josh, who's 19, Emma, who's 17, Charlie, who's 15, Sam, who's 13. Now think about that for a second. Just saying it makes me want to sit down. You need not be a math major to conclude that we have 4 teenagers. Please keep us in your prayers, Pastor. Every day it's a new adventure, as you can imagine. So we're in Middletown. We came back from Germany. And by the way, 3.5 years ago when we came back, there was a very popular governor. It's hard to believe that now, right? We couldn't figure out why. We still can't figure out why. The gap between his popularity and the body of work that he produced was as wide as I've ever seen in politics. I'm a big it's the economy stupid guy. You figure when the boss is popular, something down here is working. That was not the case. Now that gap has shrunk, as we all know. His popularity has disappeared. He's the least popular governor in the United States and in the history of our state. The bad news is the body of work has not improved. And you can measure it any way you want, but those are the facts. The one fact that I point to always is the last time the U.S. government put data out on median household income. Very important metric on how we're doing in our economy. It was an all-time record year in America. And New Jersey, we finished 50 out of 50. That's a fact. And there are lots of other facts like that. So my wife and I, for the first time in our lives, started kicking the tires on actually running for political office. First time we'd ever thought about it. We started a couple of organizations in the meantime. We figured, we may not run for it. We may not say yes. So let's start right now and get some organizations up and running that we think could help in our own small way. We started a think tank, and we started probably more importantly, and this relates directly to Atlantic County. We started an organization focused on long-term unemployed. So these are folks who are out of work for more than 6 months. In our case, we narrow it even further and focus on folks who are 45 years or older. That's a cohort of people. We have among the largest group in the country. And it makes sense when you think of the industries that have migrated out, including gaming, or shrunk. And so you've got a pent-up group of folks, typically 45 to 60. They're in a really tough spot trying to find their way back into the workforce. So this organization, New Start Career Network, tries to take them by the hand and counsel them and give them advice to try to get them back into the workforce. And then ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, we made the decision to get in this race on May 16th, and I'm thrilled we did. That's enough about me. A moment on New Jersey. I say this all over the state. I just said it with Vince not an hour ago. If we don't get the economy right, we don't get New Jersey right. Period, full stop. And when we say that, we mean both growing the economy and making it fair again. And that's really important that we do both. If we do one without the other, we will not achieve our aspirations. Fairness is just as important as growth. I think we achieve growth by reigniting a couple of the economic engines that we used to rely on, that we used to count on, that we've lost our edge in. The STEM economy, the innovation economy. You know, we used to be, I say this a lot, but you can prove this. We were Silicon Valley before there was a Silicon Valley. Think about that, right? Think of all the marine activities that you had along the shore. Think of Bell Labs or the healthcare and bio and life sciences. There's evidence up and down your arm. We let a lot of that go. I believe we can reignite that engine. Why do I think so? Well, one, it's in our genealogy. We did it before. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces are sitting there on the floor, with the exception of the leadership that has the skills and the know-how and the inclination to understand how you put that puzzle together and how you build and propel a sophisticated economy in the 21st century. We did it before. By the way, other states that look a lot like us are doing it right now and kicking our butt, as they say. I say states that look like us. I don't waste a lot of time comparing New Jersey's prospects to Montana or Mississippi, because we're in a different place. So we got to look at the cohort of states that are like us. And I'll pick one, Massachusetts, where I grew up. It's high cost like we are. It's Northeast. It's dense. Lots of legacy issues. In that STEM economy right now, they're kicking our butt. And what's really and by the way, they were kicking it with Democratic governors and now a Republican governor who happens to be my high school classmate. So it transcends politics. This is just about whether or not you've got the right skills, inclination, resume, whatever you want to call it, in your leader. And by the way, could we have a governor who wants to govern, please? Somebody who shows up for work? You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb. I will not be doing sports call-in talk radio if I get there, okay? And I love sports. And I think I'd be better at it than he is, darn it. Let's focus. Let's get a leader who's focused on the job that we're going to elect them to do. And the pieces of that puzzle, think about it. Our location. Institutions of higher ed. Top 3 public schools in the country. Top 3 educated workforce in the country. The densest state in the nation. Now that gives you environmental stewardship challenges. The environmental responsibility in New Jersey is pass-fail. You can't get an A-. But it gives you a huge leg up in the STEM tech economy of the 21st century. We are the most diverse state in the United States. That's a huge asset. You wear that as a badge of honor. That's not a burden, that's a badge of honor. That's one of your great assets. Just think about what I just said. We've got all the ingredients for that economy to get reignited. The other economy that we can reignite, and we know we can because we used to own it, is the infrastructure economy. Taking complete advantage of our God-given location that 49 other states would die to swap in with us. Again, we used to own that space. We let a lot of that advantage go. And by the way, Vince referred to this. The green economy sits in both of these economies, both the STEM side and the infrastructure side. And you mentioned offshore wind is one great example of that. That's a job creator. It's a union job creator, right? It is smart for the environment. It's good for the economy. It checks all these boxes. You could, as I call it, you could do both good and do well. We used to be, by the way, we used to kind of own that space, and we've let a lot of that go. So those are the 2 biggest engines of economic growth that we talk about all the time that we want to reignite. But I mentioned fairness. And if we don't get fair, we won't achieve our aspirations. And there's no one thing that we can do to make us fair. In other words, there's not that one signing ceremony on the deck of the battleship or the aircraft carrier that says, okay, voila, we are fair. But there are a series of steps that I think you can take that when added together have that cumulative same impact. Minimum wage getting raised back up to $15. Earned earned sick leave, not just for some, but for all in our state. Child dependent care tax credit. Maybe even a caregiver tax credit for grandma or mom or dad, right? Ready for this one? Vince got some applause earlier. I'm going to jump on that one as well, because we got to do it. Equal pay for equal work. Period. Period. Here are the facts. One solution. A woman on average in New Jersey in the year 2017 earns 80% of what a man earns for the same work. You got to be kidding me. If you're an African American woman, it's 60%. If you're a Latina, it's less than 50. Okay? So there are a number of ways to get at it. Let me give you one example that they've actually done in Massachusetts. Again, they went from Deval Patrick, a Democrat who's a friend of mine, to a moderate Republican governor who was my high school classmate, and they still got this done. Here's the law that we should have in New Jersey, and you have my word, I will sign this into law in New Jersey. If you are trying to get a job, the prospective employer may not. Now, it's illegal for the prospective employer to ask the prospective employee how much money they make in their current job. You with me? So the new company is disallowed by law from asking you how much you make in your current job. So why does that work so well? Well, first of all, women, persons of color, in particular women of color, were in a hole and discriminated against way back at square one, right? What they've found out is that hole persisted. Because I'm making this up. I've got a job. I'm assuming you're making $35,000 in your current job. I'm prepared to offer you 40. You come in and I say, how much do you make in your current job? And you say, I make 30,000. Ooh, human nature. I can get away with 35, not 40. You never get out of the hole. That's now illegal in Massachusetts. If I get elected governor, it will be illegal in the state of New Jersey. One other fairness point, and there are many others. How about making, please God, college affordable again? Can't we figure that out? I mean, it's extraordinary. And I don't know what's more shameful, but they both exist in this state. I have my answer. The 18-year-old who's got the grades, the passion, the will to go to college, he or she has everything except the money. Or on the other side, the 22 or 23-year-old woman who gets out of college and she's under a giant 8-ball of debt that she or he will have to pay off in the most productive years of their lives. It's both ends are unacceptable is my answer. We got to do something about it. We talk a lot about different ideas. I won't bore you with them now, but we got to get back to propping up, investing in higher education and making sure that every kid in the state who wants to go to college can get to college. And by the way, you ready? By the way, we are, as a state, our number one export are our kids. We lead the nation in exporting high school seniors and college seniors. We got to find ways to keep them here to go to college and here when they get out of college to work in New Jersey. So listen, if we don't get the economy right, we don't get New Jersey right, that's growing it, making it fair again. There's something else I want to say before we start to wrap this up. I want to get back to the state that we used to be. And when I say that, I don't mean the way Donald Trump and Steve Bannon and that crowd want to go back to a less diverse, less inclusive, their version of the good old days. I told you I'm on the board of the NAACP. We had our national board meeting a week ago Saturday in New York City. Shall we say there's not a lot of nostalgia around that table about going back to 1955, if you know what I mean, okay? So let's all make sure we're locked in on that point. But I would like to go back to when we had a AAA bond rating. I'd like to go back to when we had the lowest unemployment rate in the region. I'd like to go back to a time when Atlantic County didn't lead the nation in home foreclosures. I'd like to go back to the time when the state of New Jersey didn't lead the nation in home foreclosures. I'd like to go back to when we weren't downgraded 10 consecutive times by rating agencies in one administration. So there are elements I'd like to But the reality is, together, we could get those elements back with the right leadership, but we have to not go back in time. We have to go to a place that we've never been before. That's the challenge in New Jersey right now. But we were a state, and this is the benefit of not having been born here. I've grown up, looked at New Jersey admiringly, done business around the country, raised political money, and did politics around the country. I've seen New Jersey now both from the inside and from the outside. And we used to be a state where people would say, gosh, I don't know how to figure this public policy dilemma out. Let's look at what New Jersey's doing. Let's figure out what they're doing. And by the way, it also transcends politics. Tom Kean is one of the guys who's mentored me in my life, a Republican. When he was governor in the 1980s, we were AAA bond rated, and we were progressive. We may not have agreed on everything, and we didn't, but today we're no longer AAA rated, and we are certainly not as progressive as we used to be. So I want to be the governor that does things like, and again, I'll shorten the list in the interest that it's a school night. I want to fund Planned Parenthood and women's health programs. I'll be the governor who signs and doesn't veto, like this governor has, countless gun safety bills that will save lives in New Jersey. I will be the governor who does not have to be dragged kicking and screaming to put money in the lead remediation programs in a state with 11 communities and 2 counties with higher percentage of kids with lead poisoning than in Flint, Michigan. Another one of those pesky facts that apparently this governor has chosen not to look at. I will be the governor who accepts the sad reality of climate change and then does something about it. And on that list I mentioned earlier where the other states would look at us and say, boy, New Jersey figured it out. One of the things we did that was a national model, it's hard to believe this given the past 7 years, is we had what was viewed to be the national model of a school funding formula, right? It was not like it was in the old days where money chased districts. It was Vince referred to this earlier, it was a bottom-up analysis, and it was viewed to be enlightened. It would ask a series of questions about kids. What kind of household are they from? How many parents are in that household? Is English their first language or not? Are they on free or reduced lunch as a measure of poverty? Do they have some amount of special needs? The questions that we have to ask. And then you built it up from the bottom up. It's the only formula our state's Supreme Court has ever blessed. It's been underfunded by Governor Christie by over $8 billion. So that's another one on the list of let's get back to doing what we should be doing, which is fully funding public education for every kid, not some, but every kid in this state. And how about one more item on that list? How about treating each other with respect? How about civility? How about inclusive leadership? How about, will we disagree? Absolutely we'll disagree. The question is, what will we do when we disagree? Will we still try to find common ground? And will we do it with respect? I'm a big Kennedy Democrat. In fact, Ted Kennedy is one on the list of my heroes. He's on there. His son Patrick doesn't live too far from here. He's a great guy. Amen to that. Teddy Kennedy and Orrin Hatch probably disagreed on 95% of each of their respective agendas, but when they found that 5%, they owned it. They found common ground, and we are a better country because of it. That's a state that we also used to be, that thanks to this governor, we are no longer. I'll conclude by making 2 quick comments. Number 1, I'm an optimist, and that must be said. I think we're running the risk of getting our nose pressed too close against the glass. I know I have this issue. You pick up the newspaper, and you say, oh, even leaving he who shall not be named aside. You say, oh my Lord, I can't believe it's a pension crisis, property tax, another casino closed, foreclosures, whatever it might be. We forget sometimes that this is a failure of leadership. This is not a failure of our citizens. It's not a failure of the God-given assets that we have or the prospects. It's a failure of leadership. And that's a man-made condition. What we need is new leadership in this state. Leadership with the right priorities, the right skills, and leadership that shows up. Jenny, I don't think Woody Allen had it right when he said 80% of life is showing up. I don't think 80% of governing the state is showing up. But there is something to be said for showing up. Caring, 24/7, 365, doing what you are hired to do, which is govern the state of New Jersey. That alone puts us into a different place, I have to say, before you start talking about what you're actually doing when you're there. The last comment I want to make is, and I want to end with this because it was the first interview I got on May 16th. The first question, good question, I thought, why you? Put me on the spot, didn't have anything written down. I'll tell you how I answered it, and these 9.5 months later, I've not gotten any more refined. I said the following: because I will be the governor that makes decisions based on what's best for the next generation in this state, not what's best for my next election, period. And it sounds good, but I want you to judge me and judge us based on the actions that underpin that. I'd say it this way. I ask you with humility to put me in the category, the vaunted public service category, of the right people going into government for the right reasons, trying to do the right things. Again, whether we agree or not is not the point. The point is I am who I appear to be. No backstory, no higher drama, no ulterior motive. As Bobby Kennedy once said when he came into New York State to run for Senate, I just want to serve. And that's the category I'd be honored to be put in. I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming out tonight, to hearing me, and I'd love to get some of your questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is question and answer time.
Who are you?
I'm Jenny Davis. I work with Phil Murphy. Hi, everybody. Hi, Judy. Hi. Good to see
Jenny.
you. Thank you. I'm the one you're not going to yell at tonight if your question does not get read by Phil. So remember, no one's yelling at Jenny tonight if Phil doesn't get to your question. We will respond to your question as long as you put your name and some kind of contact information on your card, because as good as I am, if you didn't give me your contact information, I can't answer your questions. So please understand, we went through all your questions. There were a lot of them. There's some great topics, Phil. We should get to it. Will is on one microphone and I am on the other.
Will, how are you, buddy? Good to see you. Okay, remember, keep the microphone close to you. Thank you so much, Jenny. Sandra Beard. Sandra, where are you? Hey, come on, let's go. Sandra, where are you from?
Pleasantville.
Pleasantville. We're in Pleasantville. Nice to meet you. How are you?
Good, good.
You had a question about education funding. Mm-hmm. You can hold it if you want.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you stand on Governor Christie's equalization education plan?
Oh, the so-called fairness formula. Let's hear it for Sandra. I said to somebody recently, it's neither fair nor a formula. It's awful. I kind of already answered it in the sense that I talked about what I think are the right ways to think about this. It implies that every kid in the state was born with the same luck and the same circumstances, and this just in, that's not true. It's classic us against them. It's dangerous. It's dangerously close to racial lines being drawn. It's suburbs against urban. He's smart enough to know it isn't. In fact, it isn't fair. And the part that is even worse for me is not just at the flat dollar amount he's proposing. And he might propose this tomorrow, by the way. He might. He's hinted that he's not sure how he's going to come out of this. So we may have to go to war on this immediately. He also gives the implication that the urban communities are throwing good money after, you're throwing good money after bad. So he's ignoring real progress that are being made, in particular in urban communities in the state. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, obviously. Does it have a ways to go? Yes, but there is progress that is being made. And he's giving the implication in the suburban conversations and discussions he has that they are wasting your money. All right, that's really crossing a line. So I'm a huge opponent to that. Let's hear it again for Sandra. All I can say is I wish I did not need to wear glasses. Jen Crowell. Where are you, Jen? Come on, Jen. Where are you from?
Brigantine.
Brigantine, how are you? Philip Murphy. You had a transgender question.
Yes, I was just wondering what your stance is on protecting transgender students' rights both in and out of our public schools.
Yeah, so let's hear it for Jen. I'll try to give shorter answers, as you've seen, to get to more questions. The answer is I'm all in. All in. We put a, and I'll tell you, we're not just putting words out, we're voting with our actions. So we put a release out. When did this come out, Derek? Help me out. Roseman? What was it, end of last week? Wednesday, Thursday, does that sound right? When his executive order came out? It was on Wednesday. So we put something out immediately. And then furthermore, there was a big trans student rally in Jersey City on Sunday, and I was in a convention trying to get Warren County to put me as their favored candidate. So my wife literally dropped everything and went up and was one of the featured speakers of this thing. So we don't want, again, I don't want the historians to ask, where were the Murphys when stuff like that came down? Let me also say this, and this is a general comment, not just on transgender rights, but a general comment. If it keeps going the way it's going, governors will have never mattered more in the history of our country. Right? Either for the good or for the bad. Am I good here still? Either for the good or for the bad. Democratic Party. Everyone get your mind around this. 16 governors in the United States of America right now. 16. We are outgunned. We lost over 1,000 state legislative seats over the past 8 years. We don't have the House, we don't have the Senate, and you may have noticed we don't have the White House. So we are in a hole. And in the states where we've got courage and we've got leadership and we've got the right attorneys general, we need folks to stand up and stand tall. You have my word, I'll be doing that, and I'll make sure we've got an attorney general that does that. But I also have to remind you, it's 10 and a half more months of Governor Christie with an attorney general who seems like a nice guy, but has been radio silent on refugee bans, travel bans, transgender rights, anti-Semitic behavior, Medicaid block grants, you name it, they are away. What's a AWOL? They are not present and not accounted. We will be that, but we gotta lock arms between now and then until we get there. Let's hear it one more time for Jen. Reverend Green, I just want you to say you're looking awfully good tonight. Look at that bow tie. I was standing on the street in Atlantic City beside Derek, Reverend Green earlier, and a gentleman walked up to and said, please do me one favor. And we were trying to figure out what's the favor going to be. Please show me how you tie a bow tie. I love that. Is it Barbara Surace or Surace? Surace? Barbara, how do you say it? Surace. So I wasn't too bad. How are you?
Hi.
Do you mind standing up? I have two favors to ask you. You have to stand up and you have to hold the mic. Where are you from?
From Ventnor.
From Ventnor. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for coming.
Allow me to be the first to welcome you to Pleasantville. On behalf of the mayor and the members of council and the pastor, and you got a question on women's health. You got to hold that microphone right up to you, though.
Okay. Where do you stand on women's health issue? You mentioned funding Planned
Yes.
Parenthood and also women's right to choose.
100%. All in on both. Absolutely all in on both. Let's hear it for Barbara. Having said this, you got a governor who sees it differently for the next 10 and a half months. Remember, he took money from Planned Parenthood. It's an annual amount he's taken, which is now somewhere total up to between 45 and 50. million. 6 locations have closed. Women, almost universally of modest circumstances financially, are the ones who are suffering, and they're going without the neonatal or the breast exam or whatever it might be. Secondly, you then add the national dimension, and you've got a president now and a Republican Congress who are emboldened on Roe v. Wade. There's now going to be a national movement to pressure funding on Planned Parenthood. It's coming at us from all sides. So you have my word. Trust me on this, but you're going to measure this in action, not just in words. I'm going to be with you on all the issues related to women's health. You have my word on that. But thank you. But I cannot do it alone. We have to band together. We need to have attorneys general that stand with us. We need, please God, a Supreme Court that is reasonable at the end of the day, because the legal challenges will have to go all the way to that level. We need to hope that other states can band with us, including, please God, let's find some profiles and courage in the Republican Party. We don't have that in New Jersey, but maybe we do have it elsewhere. Great question, Barbara. We're with you on this one, all right? God bless you. Is it Anthony Marandino? Anthony, how are you, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good. Where are you from?
Egg Harbor Township.
All right. Nice to pass this over to you. Hold that microphone up there. Question on Atlantic City, right?
Yes. Economy. What is your plan to handle the economic hardships facing Atlantic City? More specifically, do you intend on having the state take over?
Okay. Let's hear it for Anthony. Let me start with I want to make sure I get this right here. Let me start with the second question, Anthony, first. I have been an opponent to the takeover. I'm not a big takeover fan. And I'm not going to suggest just by saying that there aren't issues that need to be dealt with. There are issues that need to be dealt with. But I'm opposed to the takeover. Part of the reason I'm opposed to the takeover, I must say, is I enter this with the bias from my long affiliation with the NAACP. And find a takeover in the state of a school system or a community that wasn't a community of color. Right? So, good luck, Anthony. You'll be looking a long time because there isn't an example. Okay? So let's all have our eyes wide open on that one. And so that bothers me enormously. I also think, I remember I said I was a Howard Dean guy. I think the bottom of the ballot's more important than the top, because the folks down here, members of council, are in the community. You are the closest form of government to the ground. Board of Education, similarly, mayors, freeholders, folks who are at the point of attack have a lot more knowledge and influence if they're given the latitude to focus on what ails you on the ground. I would partner with Atlantic City is the phrase that I would use, and that's the approach I would take. I've said the same thing in Trenton with a completely different dimension. It isn't a takeover, or in the case of Trenton, they feel like they're always perceived as seeking charity. It's neither of those things. It's working with each other, consenting adults working on real problems. Atlantic City has a per capita budget number, which is not only the highest in the state, it laps the second place finisher by threefold. It's way off the charts. But you also have to understand it's a very unique community, right? It's got real uniqueness to it. Here's one way to measure the uniqueness. I challenge you to do this. Ask any relatives or friends who live out of state the following question. How many people do you think reside in Atlantic City? So the bid ask, my wife and I do this, 100,000 to 1 million. My wife asked someone who was from Dallas last month, and they said 8 to 850,000. When people hear it's 39,000, they basically keel over. They can't believe it. But that says something about the throw weight of the community. It says something about the bigness of it, about the uniqueness of it, about the seasonality of it. And I think you have to factor all of that in when you sort of look at that budget number. Should it be lower? Yes. Does it have to be lower? It must be lower. But you don't need to take the city over to do that. You work with the community, and you face the reality that the state's going to have a role in Atlantic City, and hopefully it's a constructive role. But it shouldn't be taxation without representation, right? You shouldn't elect members of council and only X months later take the thing over and take their vote and take their actions away. I'm not a buyer of that. I won't go on a lot on the economic opportunity. The gaming revenues and incomes have stabilized after the horrible carnage of job loss, so it feels in a stable place. They're now talking about, when I meet with all these folks, there's now talking about further investment, which is a good thing. I think things like, I talk about the STEM economy, a world-class marine research, maybe with a stock, I don't know who it's with, located in Atlantic County, could be a huge statement. It's a logical place for it to be. I think there's a real opportunity. There's a real opportunity to reimagine the community. Let's hear it again for Anthony. I'm violating my rule of going on too long. Are you saying 3 more?
Too long, 3 quick.
Who's going to yell at Jenny? Even though she begged no one's going to yell at her. I've got M. Jill Hornberger. Is it Jill Hornberger? Jill, where are you? Do you go by M. Jill?
No, it's just that's my legal name.
Oh,
Jill.
How are you, Jill? Where are you from?
I'm from Mays Landing.
Okay, honored. I got to come back to you here because I want to make sure you're. Jill, come on, meet me out here. How are you?
Fine.
Everyone, let's give it up for Jill here. So Jill has a question about both pension and criminal justice. A 1-2 punch here.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to know if you plan on funding the pension system for government workers, unlike your predecessors. That's the first question. And
Yep.
the other one is, where do you stand on criminal justice reform, eliminating mandatory sentencing and giving more discretion to judges and prosecutors?
Okay, let's hear it for Jill. Great questions. Thank you. So, on pensions first, boy, picked 2 small topics of discussion to ask the questions, Jill. We didn't allow you a 3rd question on property taxes? First of all, on pensions. I chaired the original commission on this I mentioned 12 years ago. And if you look at our report, you should look it up too. You'll see a whole series of recommendations. It's striking, I think, for a couple of reasons. Recommendation number 1 is basically no more pension holidays on the state side. The state has to stand up and do what it's said it's going to do. You'll also notice we had an opinion on a whole lot of things, but we also note explicitly that we respect collective bargaining. So this governor tramples across the line and tramples over into collective bargaining. I respect the notion of consenting adults going in a room and trying to hammer out an agreement. The state, you know also, by the way, this didn't come to pass overnight. The pension, I'm not going to defend Governor Christie. He's kicked the can as hard or as far as anybody, but he's not the first. Both sides of the aisle. It dates back to the Whitman administration in the 90s. So whatever we do, we're not going to get it fixed overnight. I'm reminded of Theo Epstein, who took over the Chicago Cubs 5 years ago, and they were losing 100 games a year. And he was asked all the time, hey, Mr. Epstein on the street, I've got an 87-year-old grandmother, an 84-year-old dad. They're asking me, what should I tell them when they ask me about when the Cubs are going to win the World Series? And Theo's response, I think, has real relevance for us tonight in New Jersey. He would say every time, tell them to keep taking their vitamins because it's going to take a while. So we can't solve this overnight, but the state must make a major good faith move that's financial to put trust back into this. Otherwise, we're going to be chasing our tails. I have said that I would support a constitutional amendment that would require the payments and require them quarterly. And that won't be easy. That's not without pain. One area where I've talked about where I think you can wring a fair amount of money is we have an enormous amount of investments in alternative investments, which are hedge funds, private equity. Those firms have always charged an arm and a leg. Back 30 years ago, you actually got what you paid for. You got a decent return. That's no longer the case. That is literally many hundreds of millions of dollars per year. So a lot of pension funds, the biggest in the country, CalPERS, has gone away from that. State of Nevada, the city of New York will. You go to a much lower cost series of indices. You have to make an assumption you'll have the same return at the same risk. That's a big assumption. But if you do make that assumption, you save a ton of money. You plow that money, if you will, back into the pension plans. That won't solve all of the crisis, but it's a good place to start. Criminal justice reform. I mentioned that we needed to make New Jersey, I'm violating, this is my long answer, the next two have to be short, Jenny, I promise you. We have to make New Jersey fair again, not just grow the economy, but make it fair again. And my dimension in my remarks was economic. But there's a whole non-economic dimension that you have to talk about, and criminal justice reform is high on that list. So I am all in for a comprehensive, I spoke about this in the urban agenda remarks I gave in Atlantic City. I'm all in for a comprehensive set of reforms, not just a little here, a little that. That includes mandatory minimums. That includes solitary confinement. That includes shutting down private prisons that profit from people who are incarcerated. The white, non-white gap among incarcerateds in our state is the widest gap in the United States of America. The widest gap in the United States of America. And by the way, on that list, you got a lot of young people in prison for low-end drug crimes. I quoted a mother today, I won't get it right, in Newark, who said to me, let me ask you a dumb question, Mr. Ambassador. You have these banks that brought our economy to its knees, and not one person has paid a price for that. Yet my son, or I know all these people who are in jail for a low-end drug crime. It makes no sense. I've also, after having thought about it a lot and kicked the tires a lot, I came out probably now 3 to 4 months ago, and I will support and pursue legalization of marijuana, which is one of the big, you do that, you get right at that community. So that's a list of a few things. Let's hear one more time for Jill. This will be quick. Beth Georgette. Beth, where are you? Where are you from, Beth?
I'm from Pittman, New Jersey, in Gloucester County. Nice to meet
Honored.
you. And it's Georgetti.
Georgetti. Beth Georgetti.
Yes.
You got a question on Park.
Yeah, Park. Will you do what you say and get rid of Park as soon as possible to wipe out the graduation requirements? Because right now, any student that started 8th grade in 2016 is going to be graduation requirement for high school. Not only for them, but for the educators as well. It takes a lot of learning and teaching time. These teachers are stressed. I'm married to an educator. They're stressed out, and they have all these requirements, and it's not okay. And I can't opt my child out next year if it's a graduation requirement. So I want to know, is this something you are willing to do as soon as possible?
You ready for a short answer? Yes. Let's hear it for Beth. How'd I do? One more? Okay. If I got Beth Georgetti wrong, I'm going to butcher John Mizilsko. What is it, sir? I butchered it, right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I'm sorry. As promised, where are you from, John?
I'm from Northfield. Northfield.
Honored. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
You had a question about infrastructure.
Yes. How will Mr. Murphy improve our infrastructure so it stimulates economic growth?
Yeah. So let's hear it for John. This is one, I'll also keep brief because we talked a little bit about it. Infrastructure is a 2-for-1 in my judgment. It's a 2-for-1. If you get the money on Monday, you're employing folks on Tuesday, and they're good union jobs, and we don't have enough of them right now in the state. And secondly, you're employing them not in some ancillary endeavor, but in the core, sort of one of your core assets as a state, something that I mentioned to make decisions at every turn based on what's best for the next generation. Infrastructure is right in the middle of that. The next year, we're benefiting right now from investments that were made in our state in the 50s and 60s and 70s. In some cases, bridges that were built in the 19th century. So I'm an all-in for that. I was all in, even though it's painful, it's regressive, and I wasn't happy about it, and we were painted into a corner. I was in favor of raising the gas tax as long as it was constitutionally applied to the Transportation Trust Fund. That's okay, but I wanted to find ways that, yeah, here you go. I wanted to find ways that mitigated that, and I talked about raising the earned income tax credit, which they actually did do a little of. I would have gone farther. So I think there's a huge opportunity, big and small. I want to leave you with one kind of big idea that relates to it, though, that I haven't talked about, that gets at this, and that's the following. I am a huge proponent and fan of something called a public bank. And if you don't know what it is, don't be upset with yourself, because not a lot of folks do. It's only been done once ever in America, and it's in North Dakota, and it was done 91 years ago. It's a bank that's owned by the citizens. It's a for-profit enterprise, so it's not a charity. And just listen, I'll close with this one idea, which I think has huge relevance for us, including infrastructure. Right now, when Pleasantville or Atlantic County or the state of New Jersey or a Board of Education collects taxes or fees, they put them in the bank, like we do as individuals, until you have to pay your expenses, right? Human nature says that they mostly get put into big Wall Street or big international banks, because you don't want to have to tell the boss that your small bank you put the money into went bust or something, right? So human nature is most of the big banks get this. Those banks pay a modest interest rate on it, and they have no other obligation. So one bank, Matt Platkins, head of policy, Matt, raise your hand. Matt and I discovered last year a bank that had average daily balances from all New Jersey entities of about $1.3 billion, and that bank made 3 loans in that year. I think this is now 2 years ago, right? 3 loans in total into New Jersey through the Small Business Administration program for $220,000. So $1.3 billion, $220,000. Whoa. And frankly, in this case, it's not, quote unquote, their fault, because it wasn't part of the deal, right? So now let's find a better mousetrap where it is their fault. Bring all those deposits back into a new bank called the People's Bank of New Jersey, owned by you all, owned by us. And as we've thought about it, it has 3 lines of business. Again, it's a commercial enterprise. This is not a charity. Student loans at more reasonable rates, working with community banks to get more money into small businesses. If you ask any small business, why'd your business fail, or why are you still small and not big, it's almost always they couldn't get the capital. And thirdly, small-scale infrastructure loans in communities. So not the big tunnels to New York or the bridge to Philadelphia, but the road work project in Pleasantville or wherever that you're either waiting for the development authority in your county or you have to go to the bond market. This should get you the money faster. Again, commercial, but at reasonable rates. I love the idea. It's sort of a point of pride. You bring the money home. It does the business of the state. And it feels to me like it's a winner. I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for coming out tonight, for your questions. Thank you for being with us. Murphy4NJ.com. Thank you.